My name is Robert Lindsay Hadden, but most people seem to call me Bud Hadden. I was actually born in Lincoln, lived there until I was 3. Then my father moved to Sutton-on-Sea to be the chemist there. And so I grew up in Sutton-on-Sea, educated at Sutton-on-Sea and Alford Grammar School, then Leeds College of Education, where I became a teacher. And I taught for my 40 years mainly in Mablethorpe. But I had a short time in France and a short time in Leeds. Then I retired and moved here to Thailand, and that's where I've been ever since. So that was in 1945, I was born. 48, we moved to Sutton-on-Sea, where I lived until I was an adult, I suppose, with my mother, father and 2 sisters, Susan and Sally. Susan being 3 years older than me and Sally, I think, 4 years younger. Then when I finished Alford Grammar School at 18, I moved to Leeds College of Education. Was there for 3 years to train to be a teacher in mathematics and physical education. So when I qualified after my 3 years, I started off teaching physical education and a small amount of maths, but after 3 years I got the head of department in maths, so I ended up teaching mainly maths and a little bit of physical education until I retired after 40 years of teaching. 53 when I was 8 years old. Oh, that was horrendous. I mean, several times each winter the sea did manage to dribble down the road, got over the sea wall, but this time when the sea came over the wall, it broke the wall down. The wall was a vertical wall, and what happened, the sea got behind the wall and took away the foundations, and the wall collapsed. And so there was 6 feet of water. Sutton-on-Sea was under 6 feet of water for a few days before the army came to pump it out. So I remember we were in the shop and my father got really mad with this woman. She couldn't decide which lipstick, so he picked up about 6, stuck them in a handbag and says, "Get out, I want to lock my shop." But this time it came down bringing the shallows with it. And so my father did his best to block the doors and block the windows, but the shop windows all broke in by all the rubbish coming floating down the street. So we were fortunate we had a 3-storey house, so we were able to move upstairs, but some people in bungalows had to spend the night on the roofs because the sea was average of 6 foot deep around Sutton-on-Sea. So in the morning, the army arrived in their big amphibious trucks, and we were taken to Lincoln, where we had relations, but my father stayed at the shop because it was a priority shop, a chemist. And what he did, a lot of the Air Force were there doing the digging out, so to speak, because there was 6 foot of sand in the shop. And in return, he let them stay at the house so they didn't have to travel to Manby every night. So his shop was actually the first one to be up and running after the flood. But I wasn't able to return. The flood was the 31st of January, and we didn't get back as children to Sutton until September. We were in Lincoln for 9 months, nearly. I think St Giles School, if I remember correctly. If you go to the house, I think you'll still find the watermarks where there's so much salt got behind the plaster that you could never stop it. The only way you could do is cover it up with wood. I think it was the Canadians made a lot of the effort to renovate it. Yeah, for instance, the swimming pool is in the shape of a maple leaf, a symbol of Canada. Yes, they had to reconstruct the whole town really because it was totally ruined. We were on the beach after there was a big oil slick happened in the North Sea, oil spillage. I think one of the tankers sunk and all the oil drifted up onto Sutton-on-Sea, Mablethorpe, etc. And we were paid in Coca-Colas and Mars bars, because I think I was probably about 8 or 9 at the time, but that'll be right, it was a flood 53, yeah. And we were paid in Mars bars and Coca-Colas to help clean up the beach. So they gave us forks and buckets to clean up all the oil that was on the beach, stuck to all the seaweed. And anyway, we came to this big clump of seaweed and it started to move. So that was a bit scary. So we prodded it with our spades and shovels. And I realised, at first I thought it was a cormorant or a stag, because it looked to be a big seabird with a big pointed beak, but looked to be black. Anyway, it was still alive, so I took it out, took it home, still thinking it was a stag or a cormorant. And anyway, when my father saw it, he said, no, that's a guillemot, it's just covered in oil. So he mixed up a solution which would dissolve the oil. So every day, about 3 times a day, we bathed it in this solution that gradually took the oil off. But at the same time, when it takes the oil off, it takes its natural oil off, so the bird wouldn't be, shall we say, waterproof anymore, wouldn't be able to go in the sea. So my father said, you've got to feed it with oily fish, and it'll gradually get oil back, which will get back into his feathers. So I took a part-time job at the fishmonger's, and every Friday evening I'd go and clean all his, where he'd been cutting up all the fish and everything, cleaning up all the boards and the fridges, and in return he gave me fish, shall we say the fish which didn't look presentable to be sold, but was very good for my guillemot to eat. So the guillemot gradually got very strong, so I could take it down on the beach and it'd swim in the little pools and catch shrimps and little crabs and things. And then when it got very strong, after about 6 months, it started to go further and further out to sea. And then one day it went just about out of sight and it stood up in the water, flapped its wings and disappeared. That was, I'll say, when I was a boy. And then when I was at college, my father said he was on the beach one day and a guillemot came out of the water, and it actually came and sat on his feet. It recognised my father. And it was looking around for me, and my father trying to tell it, no, Robert's not here anymore, he's gone. And the guillemot returned to the sea. So that was a very nice story of Sutton-on-Sea. I had the guillemot from January until I think September. And I took it on the beach most days, and it swam in the pools, then it began swimming in the sea. Every Sunday we always had a big football match on the beach, and the guillemot would go down while we played football and go and swim. And I remember a test, I'd give other players some fish. Right, feed the guillemot. And the fish would only take the guillemot from myself or my sister. It wouldn't, and my father. It wouldn't take the fish from anybody else. Yeah. The Duke of Edinburgh came. I was a wolf cub, and we were lined up underneath the colonnade, which had been rebuilt. And the Duke came along, and I was in my wolf cub uniform, and he stopped, and he actually asked me my name, asked me what I did in the flood. And I had a short conversation with him, then he passed on. And then I think it was maybe the 25th anniversary of the flood, he came again to Sutton-on-Sea in Mablethorpe. And that time I was teaching at this school at Mablethorpe, and we were all lined up, the teachers, and he talked to some of the children. Then he came along to me and he said, hello, what's your name? And I said, may I make a little joke? And he said, yes, of course. I said, well, it's funny, you've forgotten my name, but I remember yours. And then he said, how? And I showed him a picture of me and the Duke of Edinburgh back in 1953 or 4 when he visited. And I said, that's you saying hello to me and you forgot me. and he had a little joke. My biggest friend, I suppose, were next door neighbour was Michael Mitchell and his brother Godfrey. They had the ice cream shop, whereas my father had the chemist. Then later, I suppose, my best friend was Bob Wilyman, because I happened to go, he was 3 years older than me, but he went off to college at Leeds, and when he came home, he said, this is a really good college, apply for it. So I did, so I applied, and I also went to Leeds. So I kept my friendship up with Bob for, really, the rest of my time in England, and he has been to visit here. Yeah.
Had he already left university when you went to Leeds then?
He was 4 years older than me. I went to Leeds, I went to teach in Leeds when I came back from France. I had a 3-year stint teaching, first of all English, and then English and maths, and sport, in France at the Chamber of Commerce. But when I returned from France to England, he found me a job in Wakefield in the school next to his when I first returned. So I taught there, I think, for 2 years before I got back to my original school, Tennyson. But when I got back, I was no longer the head of maths, so I just became, for my last few years, a teacher of maths and sport.
Well, that was in the 80s and 90s, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was a long time afterwards. But you also taught at some other schools other than Tennyson, didn't you?
Oh yes, there was a period when I came back from France when I was on supply. So it was supply, but I was mainly getting 5 days a week. Mainly at either Skeg, Alford, Horncastle, Stickney, all the schools in the Lindsay area. Yeah.
But you also taught in Leeds and Lincoln, didn't you? Andy's school.
I taught in Leeds for 3 years when I came back from France with Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he got me a job at school next to his. But I think I was only there for maybe 2 years in Leeds. Then I got my job back at Tennyson.
And what about William Farr?
William Farr was when I think I was in my last 2 years of teaching, and we had Ofsted came, and the school didn't do very well. And one of the members of the Ofsted team said to me, how many years have you got left? And I said, I think 2 or maybe 3. He said, how would you like to spend them at a good school rather than a failing school, which was what Tennyson was at the time. And my son-in-law Andy was a teacher there already. I think he was probably one of the, either the deputy head at that time. And anyway, I spent my last 3 happy years teaching with Andy.
And how many years did you spend in France?
I was 3 years in France. Yeah.
But you taught there a bit as well, but not in the school.
When I was in France, I went to the Chamber of Commerce and to apply for a job. And when I got to the Chamber of Commerce, the chap said, well, actually, we're short of a teacher today. Instead of an interview, how about you take the class? So I took this class, teaching English. There were adults. It was a Chamber of Commerce, so mainly there were students that were between jobs. So they'd qualified in certain areas, but they hadn't any employment, so they were doing extra work there. So I started off teaching their English, but in the second year, the mathematics teacher was having problems, health problems, so they asked me whether I could take a lesson, and I took a lesson and ended up spending 3 days a week on mathematics and 2 days a week on English, which was very good, teaching maths in French. Yeah, it was about the standard of O-level in England. It was called the baccalaureate.
Yeah.
So I was teaching maths and English. Oh, and some sport, yeah. And I just teach some sport there as well. Then after I left France, I moved back to England and took my old job back, except I wasn't the head of department. I was just a maths teacher for the last few years before retiring here. I saw in the paper there was an ex-ambulance for sale, and I went to look at it, and the guy said, oh, you can take it for a test run if you want. And it seemed to run okay, an ambulance. It was a Bedford, I think about 1500cc, quite big motor. And anyway, I got the ambulance. Then I went to a friend of mine had a caravan site, and it was a time when they were getting new caravans and trashing the old ones. And so what I did, he said, you can take anything out of those caravans over there. So I went with my screwdriver and drill and took things like cabinets, folding beds, a fridge, a cooker, and with the help of a friend, fitted everything into the Bedford ambulance. So we had folding bed, then a hammock bed, I seem to remember, a small fridge, a cooker, and a nice sitting area. And with that, we travelled, the furthest we went in that was, wasn't it, south of Spain?
What was on the roof of it?
Oh, on the roof. Oh, that was something else I found at a sale. It looked like a roof rack. So at first when I saw it, I thought it was a roof rack, and the chap showed me, and he opened it up, and it was a tent. So the roof rack opened up along the length of the top of the vehicle, and it was enough room for, well, you three little ones to sleep in, wasn't it, or two? And it just folded out in 2 minutes into a little tent on top of the thing. Oh, with a little step ladder that came out of the bottom of the tent and went down to the base of the automobile. So we had a camper van, which I think cost me £150 back in 1970s, I think it was. And we managed to travel all around Europe.
And what was on the outside of it?
Oh, I painted it, and then she said no. She decided to wallpaper it with Laura Ashley blue and white wallpaper. Everybody recognised it straight away as Laura Ashley. But then I changed it to John Player's gold and black. But that was a mistake, because the black is a bad absorber of heat. But when you're travelling down to Spain, you don't want the heat, you want the cool. So when we wallpapered it, it made it cooler, actually.
Steve Woods made a comment about it.
Oh, I wouldn't take that effing thing further than Alford. Now, was it Steve Woods or was it Bud Shields? No, it wouldn't be Steve Woods, he wasn't there then.
No, that's true, yeah.
I don't think Steve Woods...
No, he hadn't moved there.
Yeah, it was Bud Shields said, because I took it there, can you give it a quick once over? I'm taking it to France. And he said, I won't take that effing thing to Alford. And I used to send him a postcard from everywhere we got to throughout Europe. Because the furthest we got was the south of Spain. The south was the south of Spain. And I think we did Switzerland, Belgium, Italy, all of France. So we did quite well with it. And I sold it for £150, the same as I'd paid for it. Victor de Ludorum was, you got the Victor de Ludorum for getting the most points in the athletics at Alford Grammar School. And I managed to do that by winning the mile, and that was a record, the half mile, that was a record, the high jump, the long jump, and I think I got second in the triple jump. So I got the Victor Ludorum for getting the most points in my final year. At Alford Grammar School, you only did 5. 5 athletic events, 3 track and 2 field. Then the cross country, of course, I won that as well. The high jump I won, the long jump I won, the mile, the half mile and the quarter mile. Yes, I played a lot of football, mainly for Sutton-on-Sea. Had a short term with Mablethorpe when I came back from France, because Sutton had a full team. But yes, most of my football was at Sutton, Mablethorpe, a little bit about Alford as well. And then had a few games for the old boys. My last few games would have been when I was about nearly 60 years old, playing for the veterans at Alford Grammar School Old Boys. When I lived in Alford for those 3 years, I had a brief spell with the Holtby boys. I played for Alford Hockey Club, yeah, with Rupert and Richard.
Right, I didn't know.
Yeah, they came round one day, they said they were short. So I said, well, I haven't played since school, but they found me a stick and I played for Alford quite a few times, yeah. Enjoyed it. Continued doing quite a lot of running. I used to run on the beach quite a lot, up to Golden Sands and back, because at school I like the cross country. My most enjoyable experience about the cross country was beating Bob Wilyman's record. But I did run for the district, of course, and ran in the county. And my other sport was high jump, which for my size, I was always the shortest just about in the competition, but I did okay.
So what about when you lived in Alford? Yeah, where did you live?
Caroline Street, Alford, right next to Mr. Brown, the wholesale fruit and vegetable merchant, who in my spare time I'd go and work with him on his books, checking all the delivery notices and invoices, etc., for which he paid me very well in money, and also I never happened to buy any fruit or vegetables all the time I lived in Alford. It was the girlfriend of a friend of mine, was Pete Ronald, and he changed his name when he became a musician to Bram Tchaikovsky. He did very well with a band, and his biggest hit was called Airport, which actually got in the top 3 of the top 10 in England. So he became quite a well-off musician, and he opened up a small music studio in South Thoresby or Swaby. And musicians came from all over the place to do their recordings, and his girlfriend, I don't know whether it was his wife, his girlfriend was an artist, and she came to my house in Alford, and on the whole wall of Katrina's bedroom, she painted a wonderful picture of Boy George. And she painted this picture that covered the whole of the wall of just the head and shoulders of Boy George. And it was quite good. But I noticed when I went back to the house once, visiting a friend I'd met, and they'd wallpapered over it. It was underneath the wallpaper, yeah. Or underneath the boarding or whatever, yeah. We're on the sand dunes at Sutton, opposite the playing fields. And I think we're about, I don't know, 9 or 10. And we found this spot where there were a lot of lizards bathing in the sunlight. And so we caught 2 or 3 of these lizards. And Bob and I, we put them on a sort of t-shirt, so it looked like a brooch. And went home, and Granny went absolutely spare, because when she touched it, it moved, of course. It was a lizard, not a brooch.
They were still alive?
Yeah. Took it back to the sand dunes, let it go, yeah. Tiger Bay was the rough end of Sutton that I wasn't allowed to go to. It was the bit past the roundabout on the Alford Road. There was a turning about 50 yards past the roundabout on the left. The turning went left, and it was a lot of old council houses, very old. And they called it Tiger Bay because of the rough people that lived there. But I had some very good friends there. John Elson, John Pinder, but I wasn't supposed to go there. We had football on the beach every Sunday morning, depending on the tides. Sunday morning, it was always the workers against the schoolboys, but you can have Egger. The reason for that was Egger was the only chap in Sutton at that time, in the 50s, 60s, that didn't work. So he played for the workers, even though he was a non-worker, Egger.
Why didn't he work?
Apparently, when he was about 19, he went to do his national service. He was quite an odd character, very tall, but he walked with the most minute footsteps. And of course he got the mickey taken out of him doing his national service, and it seemed to destroy his capability to work. So for several years he was out of work until that new factory opened at Mablethorpe called Carabonum. Factory, I can't remember what they made there. But anyway, he managed to get a job there, and he turned out okay in the end. But for several years, he was the only one in Sutton that wasn't employed, shall we say. Now, half of Sutton is unemployed because it's become an easy place for the dolars to come and live. Kick the Can was a game we played at the back of the Bacchus Hotel, and the game was one person had the can, somebody kicked the can, everybody ran away, and what the boy had to do in charge of the can was he had to see you and say, I see you, and he'd run back, and if he touched the tin before you could touch the tin, you were a captive. So then the rest of them had to try and get to the tin and kick it to free the people. So it was quite a good game that we played around the back of the derelict part of the Bacchus Hotel. Because at the back of the Bacchus Hotel there was quite a few buildings that never got refurbished. So we used them for our games. Oh, that's gardening. At the back of our house, at the back of the chemist, it's probably 20 yards by 4 yards, and it was all rubbish. And Grandad was told by Granny, you've got to do something with the garden. Now, Grandad worked very hard through the summer, so from May till September he worked 7 days a week. So he wasn't one for a Sunday gardener. But anyway, in the winter, she said, you've got to do something with the garden. So he rang Ready Mix up. Ready Mix right, and just cemented the lot. So that was Grandad's gardening episode. Above my bedroom, yeah, there was a hatch. So I got the step ladders, put them up against the hatch and went up there, above, walking on the joists, because I knew that if you stepped between them, you'd probably go through the thin cement. And there was all sorts of rubbish up there, but then when I went further along, there was a space in the dividing wall of the neighbours, and I could go through to Mitchell's. And I was shouting down there, and Mickey Mitchell came up his. So we used to meet up in the attic. Yeah. Cards. Oh, Granny used to ban us from playing cards, but she'd sort of shoo us out one door, Grandad had invited us in the other door, and we'd be playing again, yeah. Nobody, because there were no footprints, nobody walked in the grift because it was deemed to be very dangerous, and if you stepped on the mud you'd sink and disappear. But we noticed there were so many golf balls and we thought there must be a way of getting them. So what we did, we waited for low tide. Now the grift in the middle of the golf course, so when at low tide what we did, we walked down through the grift, so there was only like a few inches of water in it, and then under the tunnel into the main grift. Down the middle of it, it was safe, and then we thought we're walking on stones, and then we thought, they're not stones, they're golf balls. So what happened was all those golfers that had lost the balls in the grip, gradually the balls would be pushed by the water down into the middle, and then they'd all, with a tidal flow each day, they'd drag them down, and they're all congregated in one area. And we were walking on golf balls. We got a sack full of golf balls. So what we did, we sat on the edge of the golf course and sold them to the golfers. Yeah, because some of them were in very good condition. A lot of them were just rubbish, but I know we made the equivalent of a man's wage for the week selling golf balls. Took them home to Granny's, put them in the bath. And the bath was just full of golf balls, sack full. Yeah.
But what did Granny think of that?
She wasn't very pleased with that, except when we sold them, and I think we bought Granny a box of chocolates or something with the proceeds to shut her up. Yeah. Bean, Paul Snowshall, a couple of years younger, but we enjoyed a lot of sport together, a lot of football. So we both played at Alford Grammar School, then we both played at Mablethorpe, both played at Sutton and at Alford. A short spell at Alford as well. He was, I think, 2 years below me maybe, but a good friend, you know, Bean.
Was he from Sutton?
You know, Mablethorpe. I never knew his father. I don't know whether his father had disappeared or died or what. Had a brother, Bob Snowshall and Bean. Bean was, he got the nickname Bean on his first day at grammar school when the French teacher, Tom Williams, asked anybody a French word for a vegetable, and Bean knew it. He said haricot. So after that, everybody called him Bean. He took on the nickname in year 1 at Alford Grammar School. And the only person I ever knew that didn't call him Bean was his wife. She always called him Paul, and would all look round for Paul.
And who was Richard McEwan?
Richard McEwan was my best friend when I was pre-grammar school, and we both at the same time passed the 11 plus to go to the grammar school. And it was one, I think it was either June or July evening, and I said I was going to go to the pictures, he said he was going to go swimming, and he went with, I think, Michael and maybe Godfrey Mitchell, and he drowned at the age of 11 plus. He'd just passed for the grammar school. Yeah.
And where was he swimming?
Off Sutton Beach.
Oh, right, in the sea.
Yeah.
So who are these on this picture?
Well, it's me. He was called Shippy. His father was Indian, but I think his mother was English. They lived next to the fish and chip shop in Sutton, because I think his mother worked in the fish and chip shop. And the other was Malcolm Simons. Thipthorpe, who was half Indian, I think Indian father and an English mother, and that's Malcolm Simons, family from Sutton-on-Sea, Simons. Mally Simons, they called him. What we'd do, often on a Saturday evening after we'd been swimming and everything else, we'd go back to the house with Bob Wilyman, Tony Baker probably, Bean, and we'd read silly comics, and eat fish and chips. I think originally, probably when we first moved to the house, the gas lights were still there, but weren't used. Electricity, yeah. Well, he was a year younger than me, I think, but we were very good friends, yeah. His father was the local prudential man, insurance man. Also was a referee at football, Bill Baker. There was 2 or 3 families called Baker in Sutton that were related. But Bill was in prudential insurance man. And he had Tony was his son, and Linda was his daughter, I think. I remember inviting him here, but he never got round to it. Now, this was our mini revolution. I think that's Johnny Harness at the front, maybe. The deputy head took away some of our privileges, and as a little rebellion, we wrote steady on the pavilion roof. Steady was the word used by the man that brought the buns every day to the school. Cream buns. They were old penny each. And his name was Crawford, and when the queue started pushing, he'd always say steady. So it became quite a name for the sixth formers to use, steady. So that was a little rebellion against the deputy head. He took away our privileges, so I think it was Mick Stones, Barry Crooks, the main people in that, yeah. A little minor rebellion for the sixth formers. His name was Andrew Elvin. He was a grandson of Coupland's grocers. It's like a mini supermarket in Sutton, next to the cinema. He was the grandson, but he visited Sutton every summer for his holidays because he was related to the Couplands. I became friends with him, but he used to swear. And when we used to go out with Bob used to have a stick. It was a swear stick. Every time Chuck Elvin, his name was Andrew actually, but everybody called him Chuck, and Bob would beat him with a stick. because he seemed to swear quite a lot. And later he became a panel beater in Grimsby, and he became very, very good at his job. And people with dints in Rolls Royces used to employ him to repair the dints. Yes, I remember he lived on the border of Grimsby and Cleethorpes on the seafront. It was a strange thing that happened. I think it was end of September, October time, and we're on the beach at low tide, and suddenly we saw this like luminescence. We went down to the edge of the water and it was like shining. And so we got our shovels and shoveled it out the water, but when you took it out the water, it went, you know, we were going to take it home to show Grandad. But by the time we took it home, it had gone dull, but he tested it with something and said it's phosphorus. And it just occurred in the sea at certain times of the year. So it glowed brightly in the sea, in the water, but as soon as you took it out of the water, it died. Oh, I always had pigeons, yes. When I started in Sutton, I remember it was the lady who worked in the shop for Grandad. It was her husband kept pigeons, and I happened to mention I'd like to have pigeons, so I went to visit him, and he gave me 2 white fantail pigeons, which of course bred very quickly. I ended up with a lot. And I converted the coal house, because we didn't use coal anymore. I remember cleaning it all out, painting it white with emulsion, setting up perches and nest boxes and things, and I had, my pigeons. But not the racing variety, they were the pretty fancy ones. I had them in Alford, I had them in Sutton, yeah. Yeah, in Sutton I had some Russian bantail pigeons, the ones I had in Alford. I bought a pair and the guy said they're very difficult to breed, they don't breed. And they're quite expensive, I remember, for me. But they did breed very well, and I remember selling them. Alford often had a market for everything. Sheep, cattle, chicken, eggs, and I sold my pigeons there. I got very, very good money for them. So they were very attractive. They were white bodies with red wings and a red head. They were a Russian variety. Chickens, in France I had a dog, 2 ducks, pigeons, chickens.
Where did you keep the chickens?
Well, there was Christine's house was really a farmhouse. So she had outbuildings and a hen house, chicken house, and then I made a pigeon house. I had acute appendix. I painted it in Alford Grammar School. They blew the whistle and he shouted out the form numbers, and they all went and lined up, and as he shouted my form, I think I was in the first form or second form, I collapsed in a heap. And they took me to Alford Hospital, which is near the grammar school, and they said, oh, it's just stomachache. Took me home, and Dr. Anderson, good friend of my father's, came and looked at me and said straight away it's appendicitis, and I had them out that night. Ian Espy got a motorised tandem. We used it for school every day, but we'd usually go along the seafront. It was a motorised tandem, so it'd do about 35 miles per hour flat out, but if you pedalled as well, you could get it up to 40. And we used it for going to school for quite a while, yeah.
And what did people think about you on that?
I thought it was a bit strange for 2 school teachers, but wasn't bothered much about that.
And what did you do when it rained?
Well, went on the bus, or went in a car. We both had cars, yeah. I fished from a very young age. My first experience of fishing, it was the husband again of one of the shop assistants of my father's. He got me into fishing, and he took me somewhere, showed me, instructed me and everything else, even gave me one of his rods, and I fished quite a lot, mainly at Thipthorpe on the river, We used to fish it quite a lot for roach and pike. The pike were caught by using small roach as bait. Quite big pike. The biggest I got was 7 kilos, which is about 15 pounds. But the pike were just for fun. You always put them back, of course.
And where are some of the interesting places you've been fishing around the world?
Here in Thailand, there's a big lake, Bang Sang Lake, with some of the biggest carp caught anywhere. 3 months ago was the last time I went there, yeah. But I do still like to go fishing, yeah. But what's nice about fishing here, you're fishing and you're catching big fish, and then a lady comes by on a bike with the beers and the sandwiches. There was always somebody there if you with the big net to get them in when you caught them. And yes, fishing here are very big fish. I think it's known for some of the biggest freshwater fish in the world, yeah. Some of the giant catfish. Yeah.
Haven't you been sea fishing here as well?
Off, oh dear, would be Bang Sarai, would it be? A friend of Anne's had a boat, Bang Sarai, and he invited us to go and stay. Sea fishing, and the biggest I got was a big stingray of several kilograms. I remember when the stingray nearly got it onto the boat, the first thing the guy did was stand on its tail and with his machete cut the sting off, because if it flipped over and hit you, it killed one of the reporters. What was his name?
The TV presenter, Steve Irwin.
Steve Irwin, that did all the...
He was swimming with it, wasn't he? He was swimming.
Yeah, and it killed him.
I think he was swimming over the top of it, and I think the barb came up and went through his heart.
Yeah. Well, that was the first thing the seaman did when we caught it, was cut the barb off. And then I remember we paid so much for the trip, but when the seaman said, the boss of the boat took us to the market, I took all the fish I'd caught, got the money, and it paid for the trip. Yeah, plus, yeah, it made a profit. For 2 days, sorry, for a day fishing, caught stingray, barracuda, that was interesting, a barracuda, which is like a mini shark, and several other smaller fish. Yeah. Jeni Zanelli. Jenny Clark, as she was then, she had a riding school. I hadn't ridden, but she wanted people to help with the cleaning out the horses and feeding the horse and grooming the horses. And in return, she taught you how to ride. But the way she taught you was put you on a little pony, bareback, and flipped its arse with a stick. And you had to just hang on. Yeah. Yeah, Jenny Clark, or Jeni Zanelli, she became.
Was it fun learning to ride bareback?
Oh, aye. It's scary, but it was fun. And we used to, once a week, as a sort of treat, because we'd work with her all week, we'd take the horses along the beach up to the Salt Fleetby, towards the bombing range, along the beach. And it was quite a nice area to go, but I know that Jeni Zanelli, on one particular trip, there's a lot of airmen in that area because it was near the base. She got a bit too friendly with an airman, and we all had to sit for about half an hour while she had a bit of fun. Jeni Zanelli, that was very interesting working with her, yeah. And her, I think it was her stepfather, helped with the horses. To start with, she had about 6 ponies, but then she got 3 16-hand, as they were called, horses, big ones. My dad was a chemist or pharmacist. That's my dad on his, was it an Enfield or something? Or was it a Norton? I can't tell. But it was my father when he was probably 30 years old or something. Actually, when he moved to Sutton-on-Sea, went in 48, the flood was in 53, the owners of the shop thought it would never recover, so Grandad bought it at a very reasonable price, but did make it into a very successful business because he saw that, as he said, you make your wage from the medicine, you profit from cosmetics and suntan creams and all the beachy things. And so he was very successful, I think, in his business, yeah. That's my dad, is it? With Sally and Susan or something. But it's not Sutton Beach, is it? I didn't know my father go on the beach very often. I only knew him go in the sea once. Yeah, he had a motorbike, three-wheeler car, and then, he went through a lot of cars, but his best car was a Jag Daimler. A hybrid, I think it was, a mixture of a Jag with a Daimler. I think a Jaguar body and a Daimler engine all the other way around. Granny worked in the shop. She spent, a good half day in the shop, along with Mrs Leary, and she lived with George Leary next to the big lake called the Brick Pits at the end of Alford Road. I used to go there bird watching and fishing, yeah. When I was a teenager, yeah. He taught me a lot about nature. Yeah, he was an interesting person.
So what was his background?
He was a ditch digger. Yeah, actually he kept the waters running through all the drains around that part of Lincolnshire by digging out all the rubbish and things, yeah. George Leary, yeah. And yeah, he got me interested into bird watching and things like that because there was a lot of interesting things around that lake.
How many sisters have you got, and who are they?
I've got two sisters, Susan and Sally. Susan, I think, is 3 years older than me, and Sally is probably 5 years younger. That's me and Susan. That's my eldest sister.
Whereabouts was that?
Probably on the beach at, it doesn't look like Sutton End, it looks more like either North End of Mablethorpe or Thipthorpe, somewhere like that.
Do you know what year it would have been?
What year? I look to be about 5, 1950-ish. Susan was also very good high jumper and 100 yards and the 220 yards, yeah.
Didn't she also get the Victor?
She got the equivalent of it, Louth Grammar, or Caister Grammar School. Oh yes, Caister Grammar School. She went to Louth Grammar School but didn't get on very well with the grammar school or my mother. So she went to boarding school at Caister, would it be? Or Market Raisin, Caister, I think. And she did the big tricks Ludorum, yes. Well, Susan grew up and went off to be a hairdresser in London, and she was taught by probably the most important hairdresser called Mr. Teasy Weezy. And I think she did some modelling with him as well. He was a top hairstylist. He did a lot of the London stars, Ted Ray and some of the Bob Monkhouse, people like that. In the late 60s, that would be, I suppose. Susan worked in London for quite a while, yeah, before she moved to Broughton. Sally got married to Ray Carey, the fireman. He was chief fireman at, I think, Humberside, because he was there in the Flixborough era, when there was a major fire at Flixborough, the chemical factory. He was, I think, a highly decorated fireman, was Ray. So Janine and Katrina. Katrina, a carer. And Janine, does she still work for the delivery company?
No, she's a runner, housewife.
James Hudson. And he was a captain in the Merchant Navy, so he was all around the world. Decorated by, would it be George, for saving a boat full of, I think they were Danish or Norwegian ship was semi-wrecked, and he saved them all. And got a big cup presented by the King of Norway, I think, and it was supposed to pass round the family. It was a beautiful cup. It was engraved with the story of what happened, showing the boat that was in trouble, my grandfather's boat, and then the lifeboat saving everybody. And it was presented to my grandfather by the King, probably George, and it was supposed to pass round the family, but it went to Veronica and stuck. We never had it. I saw it at Veronica's house, but I don't think we ever had it at our house. Either my grandfather's sisters or something went there on the travels and stayed there and got married. Potato picking and working at the bar at Golden Sands for probably 3 weeks to accumulate some money, and then Bob turned up and said, come on, we're off to Nottingham. I said, all right. And I remember I just had it was probably even a plastic bag with a change of underwear, and that was it. Anyway, we get to Nottingham, and then Bob says, oh, let's get on the A1. And we get to Dover, and he said, let's go to France. And I said, I haven't got a passport. And so we went to the passport office, got the forms, and he filled them in as my father. And so off we went, hitchhiked to Paris.
Didn't you need a birth certificate or anything?
What?
To get your passport?
Well, we managed to do it. I suppose it was called a visitor's passport, and it was quite easy to get. Except it was supposed to be signed by your parents, but it was Bob signed it.
So how old were you then?
16. So we did Paris. Hitchhiked to Paris and back.
How did you manage with money?
Sorry?
How did you manage with money?
I think we ended up with spending about a fiver. Yeah.
What about the ferry?
The ferry was £2. I remember that. Well, it got me into hitchhiking, so then I remember buying a rucksack and a tent and a sleeping bag when I got back.
So what was this, about 1961?
First time I went, I say I was 16, so it would be 61. And then we did it regularly as sixth formers, and furthest we got was North Africa.
Oh wow. Where did you go? Morocco?
Yeah. It started right through Spain to Morocco. Got the ferry over to, I think it'd be Tangiers, would it? I think it was Tangiers. Or Ceuta. I remember going to Ceuta.
We did that as a family when I went
Oh, that
there.
was later, wasn't it?
That's the Spanish
Oh, yeah.
enclave in North Africa.
Yeah, that was later, yeah. So as a student, I think it was just, no.
What did Granny and Grandad think when you got back from Paris, age 16?
They were very, they thought we were at Alford or somewhere, yeah. So we sent them postcard from Paris.
So did they get the postcards before you got back?
Yeah, they got the postcards, yeah. Before we got back. And then I remember the first thing I did when I got back that first time with Bob was to get myself organised with a tent, a sleeping bag and a rucksack. It wasn't easy having a carrier bag, travelling all around. And then we did it from school as a race. We did the race in pairs, the race to Paris, hitchhiking, yeah. Yeah, we'd all meet up at the Arc de Triomphe. We'd arranged to meet there either at 9 in the morning, 12, 3 in the afternoon or 6 at night. You went there at those particular hours, and then finally everybody turned up. And then we went to a campsite together. I know I went there on a school trip, and my father gave me a letter to take to hand to the thing. Turned out it was an uncle or something. Yeah.
Burley. They were called Burley.
Burley, that's it. Yeah, they were the curators of the thing, I think.
Yeah.
The Burleys.
Married. Goodlut.
But I didn't know really.
Peggy. It was Peggy Goodlut, I think, married Burley. Robin Burley, I think, or Robin Burley's father.
You told me if I was going for a drink to go to the Bull's Head, because you said a lot of Brits were there and it was a nice, comfortable place to have a drink, and I met Anne there. She was there applying for a job, I think.
No, right. Did she get a job there?
No, I don't think she did. She got a job somewhere else. No, she'd already got a job. She was working at the hotel, wasn't she? Bel Air, down Succumbit. But this was something else to do, I think at the weekends or something. So she came to England for, I don't know, was it 3 or 4 years?
Maybe longer.
Maybe longer, I can't remember.
Until you
And
retired.
worked at the care home Oh yeah, it was good how she got the job. Just walked in there. Came back to England when I came back and just went knocking on the door. I want a job, and they said, well, there's a job in the laundry, and she got it. And then she worked at with John and Jancy at the Thai pub in, was it Burwell? Near Louth. You went there, didn't you?
No,
Didn't you? Oh, John and Jancy's pub at, I think it was Burwell, just outside of Louth. So then we came here on a holiday, looked around, found this place. It was going on the market for, I can't remember whether it was 1.4 million or something. And I said, how much would it be if it was cash? And you'd get it paid cash within 3 or 4 days. And he said, $1 million. So I said, done. And I think I got it for 1 or 1.2 instead of 1.4. But I remember it was cash, and I think it was the equivalent of the cost of a chalet in Sutton-on-Sea. Pammy is Anne's niece, but the mother found it difficult looking after, so Anne took her over when she was just a few months old, I think, and so we've looked after her since then. She always regards Anne as a mother, of course, because she never lived with her mother, and so we were able to get her in a reasonable school, and she's done quite well.